All right. Today is April 20th. It is approximately 4 o'clock. This is the Town of Dewey Beach Special Town Commissioner meeting and public hearing. This meeting is only being live streamed. And I said it's Wednesday, April 20th at 4. I would like a motion to convene the Town Commissioner meeting.
Motion.
I got a motion from Commissioner Bauer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Persinger. The meeting has been convened. First thing, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Persinger, second by
Second.
Commissioner Bauer. Opening ceremonies. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, since we're on a Zoom, I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll do the roll call by how I see it. Present on this call is Commissioner Persinger, Commissioner
Here.
Bauer,
Present.
Commissioner Gibbings, and Commissioner Jasinski. We also have with us Fred Townsend, counsel, and guests from Starboard Claw, Councilor Mendelis, as well as Keith Kirk.
Everybody.
And Town Clerk Ashley Stander, as well as Kate Batizak as the TODM moderator, and Dawn Hinks, our building aficionado. With that, everyone being, with roll call being done, I'd like to open up the public hearing. And I'll look at you, Kate. Is there anyone in the waiting room?
Yeah, there is someone by the name of Noah Potter. I can admit them now.
That'd be great. Noah, this is Bill Stevens. You have a few minutes. Do you want to participate in the public hearing?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, sir. The floor is yours. Just, if you don't mind, tell me your address here in town.
Yeah, I'm at 21 Bellevue Street, directly across from the anticipated site of demolition and construction. My father, Stephen Potter, is the owner of Unit 2 at 21 Bellevue Street. So, I mean, we became aware of the project really by seeing the picture that's up on the door of 1818 Coastal Highway. And we have a variety of concerns. Sorry, my father's not able to join the call. He's a little bit technologically, there's some tech issues going on there. So I'm going to do my best to convey a position and really, I mean, I think our fundamental question is, how long do we have between this meeting and a vote? Because I think we might also want to put in a written submission as well. So I mean, how fast is that clock ticking between this meeting and the ultimate decision, the vote to be taken?
Mr. Townsend, do you want to address this, or do you want to?
Yes. Mr. Potter, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so this is the second public hearing on this subject, and it has been on a number of agendas prior to today. So this application was brought to the commissioners. There may be somebody who knows the dates that's on the line, but sometime back well into 2021, an application was brought to the commissioners to redevelop this site. And that application then was voted on by the commissioners to be sent to the Planning Commission for a public hearing, which took place. And again, somebody can help me with the dates.
The first one happened on the 21st day of October, if you look at the ordinance, Fred. And then
right.
Planning zone on the 13th day of November, 2021.
And then the 13th day of November, there was a public hearing there was a presentation that took place in October, followed by a formal presentation before the Planning Commission in November. And we are here today for a final public hearing. The process calls for the commissioners to potentially act following a public hearing that's held today. There were also various other instances in which this matter was under consideration, as it was the impetus for a change to the code, which itself required a public hearing before the Planning Commission and the commissioners to address the parking requirements applicable to this project and other projects throughout town. So to directly answer your question, Mr. Potter, I'm sorry, but this matter could be voted on today for final approval.
Yeah, it was my understanding from the description of the agenda, the close of the public hearing. Well, that's certainly unfortunate. There's this is a seasonal residence. I mean, there are people down here at different times of the year, but in any event, the majority of the time that people are here are in the summer. For whatever that's worth, and I make that point for whatever it's worth. Nonetheless, this is a piece of real property directly in front of, facing the construction site, and I think indubitably will be affected by the anticipated construction. There are a couple of issues. I mean, I know what I know of the project on its coverage. I guess it was the Cape Gazette that describes what the final site is anticipated to be. I mean, it seems that the primary issue, I think, first and foremost, is the outdoor seating on the second floor, and the potential that the diners will have an unrestricted sight view into both this unit and Unit 1. I can't speak for the owner of Unit 1, who would potentially be even more greatly affected, but certainly anybody trying to enjoy the outside, the view, the air, the light, the view from this property is, instead of looking at a low residential unit directly across, is going to be looking at a commercial establishment. And it seems that the operating hours of the outdoor deck on the second floor is going to end at 11, which that's good. Now 11 o'clock is a nice cutoff point, but we're also going to be looking at it seems like there's going to be an unrestricted sight line between these properties, which is potentially problematic. And I just know, looking at the depiction of the final after construction, after completion of the project, there's going to be some kind of low screening. It looks like there's a depiction of some kind of plant barrier. If there's a way, to increase that, to raise that, to make that barrier denser and or higher, so that we don't have a situation in which we're looking at diners are looking at us, and so on, and to cut down whatever kind of noise there is. I mean, we're in a situation where we have two bars on this corner. They're on the other side of the coastal highway. Right now, we have an ice cream shop around the corner and some outdoor seating at what is more of a restaurant than a bar. It's around the corner from us. But there's nothing comparable to the Bottle and Cork and Starboard on this side of the coastal highway. So that's a significant change in the environment here, far different from when it was when this property was acquired in the mid 80s. So, a first issue is just our direct engagement with people in a commercial situation on this side of the coastal highway. And we would like to mitigate that type of interaction. That's point number one. What is the anticipated, I mean, I understand there's an issue with parking. Is there an anticipated parking lot that's going to be put adjacent to the modified building? Is that what's going to be going into the 26 Bellevue, some kind of parking area? And I ask this as a general question about parking. I don't know
Mr.
what
Potter,
yes.
what I will do is I'm taking notes, and when we exit the public hearing, I will ask either Mr. Mendelis and or the representatives from Starboard to address some of these. But I do want to say, I mean, we have been down this path, but we do take your concerns very seriously. So, please go on. But we have addressed both parking as well as noise.
Well, okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I have no doubt that the body is a circumspect, careful and responsible body. So no question on my part. So unfortunately, I'm coming in at this stage in the process with these questions. And I guess the two things that come out of the question of parking is there been any thought to the possibility that we might have increased, well, two things: increased automobile traffic coming onto this street as people look for parking here and or use unauthorized parking. I mean, there's already an issue with people who are coming into the lot associated with this housing complex and unauthorized parking in our lots here. And the other thing, and I guess this is probably like the tail end of this line of questioning, is in terms of people congregating in Bellevue itself, coming out of the restaurant. I don't know how you would enforce that, but again, this having an establishment of this type here on this corner is, I think, a substantive change in terms of the foot traffic that we would have here. There's nothing like that on Bellevue itself. There's nothing. I don't know if there's anything like that on any of the side streets in Dewey, where the commercial establishment is extending into the side street and is coming off of the coastal highway.
Sir, I've duly noted from the deck issue, noise issue, parking, congregation, as well as RB2's adjacency to your residence.
Thank you.
And we will note it. Okay, Mr. Potter, thank you for calling in. Commissioner Barrett, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah. What was the notification process to all the people on Bellevue? When was that sent out and where was it sent to? I mean, I'm just wondering why Mr. Potter's only hearing about this now.
So, is it the case with respect to the lot that's been incorporated into the present property that a rezoning required a notice sent directly to the owners of the adjacent properties within 200 feet? Is that right?
Right.
Is that what was
That's
done?
correct. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this was noticed when back last September, October?
It was noticed, I don't have the exact dates, but it was noticed at the initial request for combining the lots on Coastal Highway Hammerheads and the one adjacent to it on Bellevue. So we had to do a notification to everybody within 200 feet that the lots were going to be considered for rezoning from, at least the 26 was going to be rezoned from resort residential to an RB2. At the same time that was brought up, we also sent notifications when it went to the Planning Commission for the possible conditional use application. So it's been advertised and it's been on the web.
Yeah, I mean, we've had meetings ad nauseum on this thing, and from what I'm hearing from Mr. Potter, this is the first time he's heard about it. He saw something on their door, which concerns me. That do we have an accurate address for contact of the Potter residents? Ashley, you might know what we have.
We wouldn't be able to answer that, but
Right now. He can contact tomorrow. I'm happy to go over the information we have for him to ensure it's correct.
Yeah, I mean, because the time to bring up all these issues was 6 months ago, and now we're here at a decision, and there's tons of questions, and we need to avoid that wherever possible.
I am reminded, if I could, Mr. Mayor, I am reminded that there was a rezoning of the adjacent smaller parcel, which also triggered notice requirements in addition to the meetings that I referred to earlier. And that also was referred to the Planning Commission and came back up. So those were two additional meetings that were noticed regarding this project.
Right.
Well, Commissioner Potter, I'm sorry, Mr. Potter, I thank you for your time. Is there anyone else, Kate, in the waiting room?
Not at this time.
If that's okay, I'd like to close the public hearing and move on to the first matter of our agenda, which is to discuss and possibly vote to approve an ordinance to expand an existing conditional use for the property located at 1818 Coastal Highway, Dewey Beach, Delaware, formerly known as map 20.18, parcel 149.00, located in zoning district RB2 south of Bellevue Street and north of Dagsworthy Avenue, pursuant to section 25D1A1 of chapter 185 and in accordance with the definition and requirements of restaurant in chapter 144, section 6, as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Committee. I know that we've, as Commissioner Bowers commented, we've had more meetings than I think anyone anticipated concerning this particular conditional use and what's going to be a potentially conditional use. And I'll open up for the commissioners if they would like to have Mr. Mandelis or Mr. Kirk participate and say anything.
Oh, I think that would be appropriate, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
If we could hear from the applicant as well as potentially staff for any staff comments they have about this application.
Fair enough. Mr. Mandelis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me first put on the record, my name is Glenn Mandalis. I'm an attorney with Baird Mandalis Brockstead, and I represent Starboard Claw Land Company, who is the applicant. With me on the screen, you'll see Keith Kirk, who is a principal with the project and is here today to also answer questions that might come up. Mr. Montgomery, affectionately known as Monty, is traveling today, so he sends his regrets that he is not able to be here to participate. Let me begin by thanking you first for scheduling this special meeting. We have been through a lot of meetings, and this is another special meeting that you've done to accommodate us, and we do appreciate you taking time to do that. I won't go through some of the preliminary remarks about the location, but just to address some of Mr. Potter's concerns, this has been quite a process, and it's all been meaningful. It's resulted in an exchange between neighbors and the applicant to be ensure some of the concerns he raised are addressed. As has been mentioned, we've been through a rezoning. We started back last summer. The rezoning required that a comprehensive plan amendment that's occurred. The lots have been consolidated. There's been a code amendment related to off-street parking in the RB2 district, and the Planning and Zoning Committee recommended conditional use approval, which is the subject of today's hearing. So all of that's been happened, and there's been a lot of notice that's happened along with it. So it's unfortunate that Mr. Potter didn't see those notices or didn't focus on them, but there has been a lot reported in the paper and a lot noticed. But as to, for example, the deck on the second floor and the fence, so condition number 18 on the proposed ordinance states as follows. It says, there'll be tiered plantings shall be installed and maintained along the east boundary. So this is the boundary between the back of the property and the residential district where Mr. Potter's father's unit is located. It says tiered plantings shall be installed and maintained along the east boundary of the property for the first 22 feet from the Bellevue Street property line in order to protect the neighboring properties, privacy, and protect said properties from light and noise resulting from the applicant's operations. This planted buffer area shall be a minimum of 2 feet 6 inches wide. Such tiered plantings shall include ground level plants and or ground cover, mid-height shrubberies, and tree canopy. The planting plan shall be approved by the town code enforcement official or designee. So Mr. Potter referred to that first rendering that we show that's loaded to the website. That rendering shows a fence and some arborvitae. I think this provision in the ordinance requires tree canopy. So it'll certainly be taller than the low-level shrubbery that Mr. Potter referred to, and maybe we could have done a better job on our rendering of showing that. But there will be a fence back there at least 6 foot high, as well as tiered plantings that will be designed to shield the view and to break down any sort of noise. But as you know, the conditions also don't permit outdoor amplified music. Any speakers inside have to be pointed away from doors or open windows. So a lot of those things are already built into the approval ordinance. In case Mr. Potter hasn't seen it, there's an ordinance proposed on the website. It's got 23 separate conditions that have all been developed through these public meetings to address those sorts of concerns that have been raised. As to the parking, Town Council did approve an ordinance a few months ago that raised the off-street parking requirement. The former off-street parking requirement was if there were 2,000 square feet of patron area or more, that triggered an off-street parking requirement. That was changed to 4,000 square feet or more would trigger the off-street parking requirement. We currently have, as far as patron area goes, 3,815 square feet, and therefore there is no off-street parking requirement for this application. The thing to keep in mind, though, about that is when the off-street parking requirement was raised, it allowed our team to pivot and go from what was a non-conforming building that violated setbacks and didn't provide some of the spaces that we're able to provide to now an entirely code compliant project. Not only is the project now code compliant, meaning that we can demolish the old Hammerheads structure, which I understand doesn't have a great foundation, and build an entirely new structure. But it also allowed us to address another concern that was raised by the neighbors, which is whether there are enough restroom facilities being provided in the building. Formerly, we had 2 on the first floor and 2 on the second level. This change allowed us to expand a little bit of the area upstairs to provide 2 additional restroom facilities. So there are now 4 on the second level and 2 on the first level. So there is no off-street parking requirement, but because there is none, it allowed us to address some of the other issues that have been raised through these public hearings.
And Mr. Mandalis, on that point, could you argue that the absence of a parking requirement or the reduced parking space requirement actually could have a beneficial effect when it comes to car traffic?
Absolutely. I mean, there's been concern, Mr. Townsend, about that intersection of Bellevue and Coastal, kind of tight, and there were some parking spots that were tight there. And in the public hearings, people talked about the danger of that intersection. This proposal will hopefully remove vehicle traffic from that intersection and encourage people to walk to the restaurant or to bike to the restaurant, or perhaps scooters. There's been some research, I think I submitted it during one of the hearings, that suggests that off-street parking requirements actually lend to traffic congestion, and not requiring off-street for certain types of establishments can encourage less traffic and less traffic instances. On the on congregating on Bellevue, I don't know really how to address that. We're moving from a non-conforming Hammerheads establishment to a totally code compliant and conforming restaurant. Dewey Beach is a very, very, very busy town during the season, and there are a lot of people. We've done nothing in this application to encourage people to somehow congregate on Bellevue, but I don't know how to really address. I don't think this is going to encourage any additional congregating on Bellevue. But other than that, I'm not sure, what response I can give. Are there questions that I can answer that still remain? We have some renderings I can walk through, or I can describe. Yeah,
Mr. Mandel, just give me 1 second. Fred, I just got notice from Kate that Mr. Potter was not finished, but he must have just lost connection. And I'm not opposed to allowing him to finish his statement unless I can't because we closed public comment.
I think under these circumstances with Zoom meetings and all the technology challenges, that it would not be objectionable to allow him to
Okay.
continue.
Kate, can you let Ms. Potter in? Also, just let her know that restriction on time.
And Mayor, when Mr. Potter links up, I'd like to make a quick remark about the nature of the proceeding.
And also just let her know that restriction on time.
Hi.
Mr. Potter, can you hear me? So, you're welcome back in, and the council is and Mayor, when anxious to hear your comments. When Mr. Potter linked up, I'd like to make a quick remark about
Mr. Potter, you need to shut off the Facebook feed.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure that one out. Let's see if this will do it. There we go. Okay, I'm back.
Okay,
yeah,
and so one thing I wanted to mention to you, Mr. Potter, is that the nature of a public hearing is that the public's invited to make their comments, but it's not generally a question and answer session. So you kind of got the feel of it before, although the abbreviated nature of it was that you had some concerns, you raised them, and council took them down and was intending to get some comment from the applicant. So there won't be, you're not encouraged to have a direct dialogue with either the commissioners individually or the applicant, but please raise your questions, raise your concerns so they could be taken up with the applicant separately.
Okay, thank you. If I understand, I mean, I think make one clarification is that this unit is not, this is on the across the street. This is on the north side of Bellevue. So I understand there's some kind of mitigation measures that have been taken, but if those are on the east side of the property, that doesn't do anything for us. I mean, we are in a situation where we're going to be looking south from the first floor deck and the second floor deck. And, you know, the third floor deck may not be implicated because the third floor deck will be above, but we're talking about a direct sight line from the front of this unit, what has the sun, into that seating area. So I understand that the rendition apparently doesn't depict what the final version of the second floor seating is going to be. I mean, so I can't tell just from that rendition how much it's going to block the view. But that's, I think, that's a primary question. I mean, there's a sound issue, potential of sound, and so we have an auditory issue and a visual issue.
Mr. Potter, is there anything else?
I don't think so. I actually think I have my father on the line. If I can just, if you want to come back to me, I just want to ask him if he has any questions or comments. Can I take a moment to do that? I couldn't get him onto this call. That's just the way, that's the nature of the situation. So if you can bear with me a moment, I'll just ask him if he has any questions or comments. If that's all right, if I can ask the indulgence of the, thank you very much. One moment, I'll mute for just a moment. Hi, thanks very much for your indulgence. I've asked my father if he could just make the statement directly so that I'm not translating. So can you just announce yourself and see if the board can hear you?
Hi, my name is Steve Potter. I've been at this place for the last long time. And the prospect of having to look across the street from the deck at our place, or the decks at our place, is really, it's bothersome. And if there was some slatted fence along the side, it wouldn't actually be like a prison, but certainly would block the view. That, I believe, would be a benefit, both from the people who are eating there and the people across the street.
Okay.
You know what I mean by a fence that's slatted? Just with openings every 2 inches, 3 inches or so between the slats, so that it would be a.
Yes, sir. We do understand, and we'll ask that Mr. Mendelis and Mr. Kirk address that after the public hearing section.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd also like to say I would like to think that perhaps for the diners, they might not lose anything by the prospect of just looking at residential units across the street. It might be a win-win for everybody.
Mr. Townsend.
So, Mr. Potter, is the living area you're talking about on the first floor or on the second floor of your unit?
Is that directed to me or to my father?
To you, I think you can answer it.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so there's a first floor deck and a second floor deck that would both be implicated potentially. There is a third floor deck as well, but that sight line, I think, would be above. It would not be at eye level essentially with the seating, the dining area.
But the concern you've raised is with regard to a second floor outside eating area at Claus. Is that right?
My sense from the rendering is that it would definitely implicate the second floor, but very likely the first floor as well. I mean, from sitting where we are, I'm on the first floor, and I'm at eye level with the second floor of the existing building at 1818. So, I mean, it's really.
I mean, I meant to say that your concern relates to a second floor deck, not to the first floor of the restaurant.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, I'm going off of the rendering. I mean, the rendering indicates that the outdoor, I understand the description is that as the conditions set will direct noise away into the establishment. So we presumably wouldn't have an issue with noise coming out from the first floor. And so it seems that my impression is that it's the second floor that would be, have the most implications for this unit.
And your property is immediately to the east of this site. Is that right?
North.
Yes. Right. That's
across
why,
the street.
Oh, I'm
next
sorry.
to the
That's
ice
right.
cream.
That's right.
so that's why the mitigation measures
Right.
that were described they're not relevant to us. That would be to the new this new housing unit. Well, the recent construction, I guess, directly to the east of 26 Bellevue. We're at 21.
Thank you.
Mr. Potter, thank you for your time. Again, we are going to go back and listen to the applicant and discuss the issues that you've raised as well that others have raised. So thank you, sir.
Thanks for your time. I'll be in touch with Ms. Sander tomorrow to get a better sense of what's going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So can we turn it back to Mr. Mendelis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize for my earlier comments. I was thinking that he was to the east, and now understanding he's across Bellevue to the north. The slatted fence that you discussed, just to be clear, that side of the building facing north has an ADA entrance. There's some proposed seating and scooter and bicycle parking. To put that fence in there would sort of, interfere with those intended improvements. Additionally, that side of the building, if you look at the rendering, I mean, it's quite attractive, and a fence that would be high enough to really block a second floor view shed from across the street would be a pretty tall and unattractive structure in my view, rather than what we're trying to create is a very accommodating, attractive, kind of upscale types. Although Monty hates me when I say upscale, but it's a very nice looking building, and we would hate to block that view shed. As I said, the building is entirely code compliant, so the decks are permitted. So is the structure as it's proposed. So I don't know of anything other than this sort of fence that he's proposing that would try to address his concerns. I will say that this is the only owner on that side of the street that has raised this sort of a concern, and it does come really at the 99-yard line after we've been through a lot of kind of redesign and redevelopment on this. I should note that I just mentioned the proposed seating there and the proposed bicycle and scooter parking. Those do, by the way, because I keep saying it's code compliant. That's probably the one thing we show in our renderings that isn't technically code compliant. Those areas do sort of straddle the applicant's property and the town's property. So we have to work those out separately with the town to the extent the town allowed us to construct those two items. Obviously, it would be at the town's discretion. If the town ever wanted to take those items up or remove them, that would be completely at the town's discretion, and we wouldn't have any say so in the matter whatsoever. So that's the one item I should mention that's not, sort of all entirely code compliant. But I see it as separate and not necessary to the restaurant plan itself.
Understood. Mr. Manellis, is that all that you have?
It is, unless there's questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
I'll open up to the commissioners. If you have any questions to Mr. Manellis, Mr. Kirk. Commissioner Barry, you're the first one I saw, then Commissioner Persinger.
Yeah, not necessarily a concern to ask. I mean, when I think of noise in that general area, I mean, you're directly across the street from the Bottle and Cork, which, I can't see this restaurant being louder than the Bottle and Cork, nor Jimmy's that plays live music every evening as well. The noise part of it, just historically, I mean, there's noise in that area anyhow. I'm not sure I'm convinced that there's going to be more noise because this restaurant has outdoor seating to it. Much like the Starboard, does that have more noise because they have outdoor seating right now as well, or Dewey Beer Company or anybody else? So that was my only comment on it.
Commissioner Persinger.
Yeah, I would just comment, first of all, outside seating areas are clearly allowed by the town code, and as was pointed out earlier, would close at 11 p.m. I think what is proposed here is fully consistent with the code in terms of noise reduction and noise limitation. Couple of questions that I have on the second floor deck. It looks like in the rendering that there's a solid wall that is the border around the entire top deck, and then on top of that there appear to be some plantings on top of that. So how high would that area be? I mean, diners are going to be seated. So it would seem that wall and those plantings would provide some screening. So I'm just wondering how high that would actually be.
Good question. Keith, are you able to address that?
I don't have the actual height. I would have to look at the code and see what a reasonable size fence is, just for safety measures. I would assume it's got to be close to 36 inches, and that includes the planters.
That includes the plantings on top?
At least 30. I mean, I think it would be taller than 36 inches. I'm trying to look at the measurement right now. But from my understanding, and I understand the neighbor's concern, I mean, with the wall and the planters, short of seeing somebody's head, you're not going to be seeing a whole lot of people eating.
Mhm. I mean, that would be my impression too, just looking at the rendering. I would think that the barrier wall should be at least 36 inches high just for safety purposes.
Yeah, precisely.
Might even be higher than that. I mean, 42 inches is a measurement that sticks in my mind, but I could be completely wrong about that. Then the other question I had is with respect to this parking that you were talking about, the scooter parking, that sort of thing. The presentation that we heard originally was a little confusing to me in terms of what's town space and what's privately held space that might be available for parking. And aren't there maybe 3 or 4 public town-controlled spaces along Bellevue right now? Isn't that the case?
I believe
That's
it's
correct.
And these would be adjacent
They
to that.
do belong to the town, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Mr. Dedes?
They do belong to the town.
And that's how many spaces are there?
I believe there are 3 spaces that I know of, and the town manager is aware that we're trying to limit some parking on the 2 adjacent to the corner. And that would be on the north side going towards Route 1, because it becomes a hazard. The cars that park out actually go out into the street in that parking area. So he's working something out. But he'll finesse that when the time comes, as far as the once we start meeting with the construction people that they're going to hire. So we'll work on that with Monty and that. But they are our parking spaces. They belong to the town.
So is there some possibility, as was suggested by Mr. Mandelis, that there could be some kind of joint arrangement where you might have some scooter parking area, part of which would be owned by the town and the other part would be owned privately by the restaurant owners?
I believe that's in a discussion, and I believe the town manager is favorable to working with them on that.
Okay, all right. And just a couple other questions. Is there an entrance on the north side to the restaurant, or is the only entrance on the front side, on the Route 1 side?
Also an entrance off Bellevue for ADA reasons.
Okay.
The ramp.
Is there any ADA parking back there near that entrance?
Not that I'm aware of. Keith, are you aware of anything in that area, or Jim?
But that's not planned.
No, but that doesn't. No, I mean, that's something the town could easily put in.
Okay, all right. Those are all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Commissioner Givings or Commissioner Jazinski, any questions?
Sure. Unless you had anything, he doesn't have anything. Okay, so my question is actually for Jim Dedes. Jim, do we as a town charge for scooters if they're parked in like town?
Not right now.
We don't do that. Okay. All right. So
no, that's a discussion. That is an ongoing discussion right now.
Well, the only point was,
yeah.
So my only question was really just because some of the bike and scooter parking is on the town right away. I just wanted to understand how that would work. But if we're not doing it now, there's really no need to get into it. I guess my only thing from that Mr. Mandelis brought up is I would like us in the ordinance that's passed just to put a statement in there that the amenities, which I think are great in terms of the seating and the bike and scooter parking that are in the public right of way, can be repurposed by the town in the future if we so desire, just so that there's no kind of future claim on those have to stay that way forever. But I think it's a great amenity to have the seating areas and the bike parking.
If I could add to that, Mr. Mayor, that sometimes I see municipalities licensing agreement, so it would be a license that says we can use it for parking or seating, but there's always a clause in there that says the town can tear it up with 10 days notice or whatever, and it's gone. So we'd be willing to do that. As to the, you know, who regulates it and whether it's metered parking, whatever, we would see it as that's at the town's discretion. If we're able to jointly use that area, you would still have all the regulatory control over it.
But I believe Commissioner Jasinski's issue is there an amendment to the existing 23 points or in addition to that needs to be added to this ordinance in order for us to potentially discuss and vote?
I wouldn't know where to put it, Mr. Townsend, if you could just say where to put it.
It seems to me that, go ahead, Jim.
I just want to caution that any additional seating arrangements would be considered patron. If it's on town property, that's not a problem. But if it's on their property, additional seating, that would go into the patron space. And I just want to caution that we don't want anybody to exceed the 4,000 square foot patron space. That would trigger parking. So it would have to be under the 4,000.
Right.
Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, but nothing in this ordinance licenses or leases or any way gives them unconditional use to town property. Is that correct?
No, that's correct.
And to Commissioner Jasinski's point, before anything is done, we would have to come to some agreement, making sure that there's no squatters' rights to the corner piece that we lose control over.
We could add a provision, Mr. Mayor, at I think at 24. I don't know why it couldn't go as the last item, just indicating that any incorporation of public lands or right of ways are subject to the town's right to repurpose or terminate. I mean, we can come up with some language that'd be simple enough, and I think the motion could need not be based on the final version of that language.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Ms. Gibbons.
We did get an email today requesting some change in the wording about smoking from will to may or something like that.
I was just gonna notice that, and Ashley and I picked up on a few other things. One is that to change number 23 from smoking area will to smoking area may, therefore the person doesn't have to have a smoking designated area. And at the end of 23, actually that will be semicolon right now. At the end of 24 will be period.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was acknowledged in stations. Thank you.
And the only other thing that I noticed that is in section, or that we noticed, was in number 16, there seems to be an errant D and E in the third line and in the fifth line when it says but not to be limited to the following, and both those reference letters could be removed from this ordinance.
Mayor, since we're on those topics, may I interject?
I'm sorry?
May I interject since we're on the topic of the ordinance?
Of course.
That at item number 20 speaks of providing and maintaining lighting in the parking area. And since there is no parking area, I don't know if that creates any confusion. I don't mind leaving it there, but I'm not sure that it's necessary.
Will there be any parking, Mr. Mendelis, in the back for staff?
Not that I'm aware of. Keith, is there? I mean, we have an area there to be able to get to the trash receptacles, but no parking.
Correct.
I'm always for having things well lit in Dewey. I think it provides safety.
We'll for sure have that back alley lit by plenty of lights. If that's what you're talking about, you know, yeah, we'll absolutely have that lit.
Just leave it then. Just leave it in case there's any doubt.
Okay.
It needs to be lighting.
Any other? Yes, Commissioner Persinger.
Well, if we're talking specifically about the ordinance, I had several comments. You just mentioned paragraph 16 and those stray letters that references in there. That seems to be a direct quote from some alcoholic beverage control rule number 2. So I'm wondering if it's correct to take those out. I mean, I see your point there, but it does seem to be a direct quote. So I think that should be looked into before you make the change there. There's also a missing word in the second line of paragraph 17. Should say to buffer impacts on residential properties. That's just a minor point, but I think that does help a little bit. A couple of more perhaps substantive questions. This ordinance is set up as expanding an existing conditional use for the property at 1818 Coastal Highway. We're now, the situation is involved where we're now tearing down the entire building and really starting from scratch. We've really gone through a full conditional use process here. I'm just wondering, is there any relevance at all really to that existing conditional use since the building is now being torn down? Perhaps not a major point. I know that the first 7 paragraphs come from that original approval, conditional use approval back in 2008. But I defer, I guess, to our town solicitor whether or not this should remain as an expansion of existing conditional use. And then my last point is there's already reference to section 144 of the code, and that the requirements there would be complied with by the restaurant at all times. I'm wondering, because this is a conditional use situation, I'm wondering if we should also make reference to section 185.25D1A1, which sets forth all of the conditions that any restaurant must meet as an approved and conforming property. My suggestion would be to include an additional paragraph between 9 and 10, a new paragraph 10 that would say, the conditions specified in section 185.25D1A1 shall apply to the operations of the restaurant. And those are my only comments.
So I'd ask, I don't have any issue with those amendments and changes, but I'd ask that Ms. Sander, if you want to comment on Commissioner Persinger's number 16 elements, because I believe you and I had a conversation about this.
Yes, so letters D and E are in there. When planning and zoning made the recommendations, they were going off of the Dewey Beer Company ordinance that was approved, and there was an A, B, and C in that Dewey Beer Company ordinance. So they were adding a D and E to that specific ordinance. It did not come from the Alcohol Commission. It just came from a previous ordinance for a different establishment in town. That is, I'll converse with Fred, but I do believe that is okay to be stricken from that.
Well, should we remove the quotation marks then?
Right.
That's a good suggestion, yes. Excellent.
Okay. Any other comments, questions on this ordinance? I know that we've got whoever's may make a motion. There's a lot of amendments. So
if I could address.
Yes, sir.
So the remarks made by Mr. Persinger were whether this should be an expansion or something other than an expansion. So I think we're here because the existing conditional use is proposed to be expanded. And the conditional use is the code speaks to the issue of expanding an existing conditional use. And I think that is, in fact, what's going on here, regardless of whether the actual building members remain in place or not. We're comparing the future building to the present building, and by virtue of the expansion of that building, we're considering it an expanded conditional use. I think that's not an inappropriate way to look at it. So I don't think it's wrong to characterize this as an expansion of existing conditional use. And also, it recognizes that this current structure could be operated as is. If the new owner of it decided to open tomorrow and operate as it had, it would be permitted to do so. And if we were to consider this a new conditional use, there's an implication that perhaps we could deny it. And I don't think that would be a fair conclusion to reach. I don't think we could deny the continued operation of Hammerheads in its current location. No one wants to do that. but I think the concept of referring to this as an expansion is appropriate for that reason also.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Persinger, you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. So any other comments? Then can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Okay. Do we need to motion all of the amendments in, or do we go to a vote, Fred?
Well, let's ask, does anyone object to any of the proposed edits that were made by Mr. Persinger and that were referenced by Ms. Sander, and regard the use of public lands, regard the adherence to the zoning code requirements, and to the edits that were necessary just to make it read more appropriately? Is there any objections to any of the proposed suggestions?
No objection here.
no objection.
So I think it's safe to say that the commissioners know what they're voting on, and that
Right.
the motion is to incorporate the proposed changes, and we can make those prior to the execution of the.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance as amended. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Aye. That passes unanimously. As the only thing on our agenda, I'll open up for any commissioner comments. Commissioner Bauer,
No comments.
Commissioner Gibbons,
No comments.
Commissioner Jazinski,
No comment.
Commissioner Persinger,
No comments.
and I also have no comments. May I have a motion to adjourn the town
So
special
moved.
commission meeting?
Second,
Commissioner Persinger and Commissioner Gibbons, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Unanimous.